their food scraps. When I deliver to restaurants, I deliver the food and I bring back their eggshells and coffee grounds mostly. Working with chefs, it's easy to explain to one person how compost works, but sometimes there's a miscommunication and they send me like meat or oil. So it's easy to stick to like, give me your eggshells and your coffee grounds. Then I get calcium and I get caffeine. Both of those are really nice for plants. Caffeine is a pest repellent. That's why plants have caffeine in them. So caffeine helps keep off ants. It helps keep off aphids. It breaks down really well. It's very moisture rich, which is good for compost. And then eggshells, of course, provide calcium. So the chickens shit, and then I collect it with their bedding. And then I mix that into my compost as well.
Why is chicken poop so good?
All poop is pretty good. The ones that are less good are like cat and dog when you're talking about New York. Cat and dog, it salinates the soil. There's also, because they're carnivores, there's just, I think, too much for me to have to deal with in terms of food safety. If I was just on a regular farm, I'm sure I could find a way to compost dog manure for a year and age it. But I try and turn everything around here within 3 to 4 months. So chicken manure is easier, it breaks down a lot faster, and it's extremely nitrogen rich. This much chicken manure has as much nitrogen in it as like a pile of like compostable food. You know, it's really intense. And it's the same with worm poop. Like worm poop is a very concentrated form of compost. So in terms of feeding your plants, like a big old thing of compost, you could also do like a smaller amount of worm poop. You know, everything has different carbon and nitrogen ratios. Like carbon ratio wise, you could have like a stack of newspapers or you could have a pile of sawdust. It has the same amount of carbon. Okay.
So just to get back to bees for just a moment, I heard that if people who have allergies against the pollen, if they eat the local honey, like a teaspoon a day, it helps the antibodies in the body to, develops an immunity to that. Have you heard that as well?
I have.
Have you seen that to be the case?
Well, I can say growing up, I had a sister who was so heavily allergic to wheat and such an asthmatic, she could, like, as a child, barely move. Like, she all the time was, like, raspy and sick. And I had really bad allergies as well. And I started growing my own food in college. And my mom had my sister and I outside every day, like, exercising for most of our childhood. And she worked herself out of her allergies by just constantly re-exposing herself to stuff. I know honey definitely helps.
It has to be local, I heard, though. New York City honey, if you live in New York City.
Yeah, which makes sense because you wouldn't necessarily need to adapt to unlocal pollen, like because you're not around not local pollen, it's not local. But the honey, the science behind it, maybe some of the nutritionists know more about it. For me, I just know that exposure to the outdoors is what cures allergies to the outdoors from my own experience. At the same time, I have a boss at the Botanical Gardens who's like freaks out every spring and can't breathe, and he's been doing botany and arborist work for like 17 years, so I'm not sure. Are there folks who know a little bit more about that than I do with the honey thing? Because it is interesting.
I heard that from a beekeeper once in the past, but I also have a lot of allergies, and one thing that works is staying away from dairy during the height of the allergy season.
Yeah.
A nurse practitioner told me that, and it worked like a charm. Will you also tell us a little bit about yourself, Annie, before we go outside?
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking is maybe we could go up and walk around a little bit, and then I'll talk to you guys more about myself at the end, because that's potentially the least interesting thing, and I want to leave lots of time for other stuff. Well, but it'll be a good excuse for us to cool off. So.
And this is Katie.
Hi.